Hello again then guys, and welcome to the first in an unknown number of videos which I'm going to be releasing over an unplanned schedule. They'll just be dropped here or there, and basically this series is a little bit different to the other two main series which I do on the channel, which are basically either movie reviews or ultimate fights. This though, as you'll have seen from the title, is another thing entirely. This is my favourite movie moments. Now, every person has different favourite movies, of course, different favourite movie moments, etc. And by definition, many of the reasons why certain movies, characters, or moments will be favourites of different people tend to be to do with the fact that it will be connected to something that's happened in your life, something that will make you value that particular thing or person or story more. So in my case, I tend to value movie moments which are different. Stuff which is manufactured to make you feel a certain way doesn't necessarily always work with me. Movies that try very hard to be sad, for instance, especially if it's to do with people and relationships, that just doesn't work for me. For me to feel sad in a movie, it has to be more than that. It has to be something unconventional. Some of the movies which have actually made me feel like crying, not necessarily actually cry, but close to it, aren't obvious choices of movie. They're movies like Oldboy. I was near to tears with Oldboy, and that's a movie which most people probably wouldn't be. Most people would watch that film and not even have the inclination to well up over it. But I did, because for me, that hit exactly what it takes for me to have more of a personal reaction to a film. I don't fully understand why that movie did it for me and others don't, but that's just the case. Now, over the course of this series, I'll just be relatively briefly discussing some of my favourite moments, and they're not necessarily always emotional moments. They might just be my favourite moments from a movie making point of view, something that I think was done very well or that really stuck with me. And for this first of my favourite movie moments, as you'll have seen from the title, it's from the movie The Andromeda Strain. As I said just now, random movies which affect me and stay with me that just don't with other people. Now, I'm talking about the older Andromeda movie, not the made-for-TV movie, the two-part version, although I do like that one as well, but it's a little bit too polished. This older film has always been one of my favourite movies ever since I first saw it. I think there are probably still quite a few people who haven't got around to seeing this film. Understandably, there are far more newer films to get around to watching before you start watching older stuff like this. But one of the reasons why I like the film in general, before we specifically look at my favourite moment in the movie, is that I like movies that have more of a surreal or eerie tone. When I make a short film, and I have made some on YouTube, I always aim more to be creepy or unnerving rather than scary. Because by definition, I don't think you can make a scary film, because what scares one person will not scare someone else. However, if you can make a film that is unnerving, or in other words, not quite right, kind of the uncanny valley effect, if you will, something that's almost right, but not quite, and that's unsettling. It throws you off. It presents you with something that's almost the way it should be, but has some underlying strangeness there which throws you off. That does it for me. I love movies that do that. I love making short films that do that, and for me that's a far more effective method of making people uneasy than jump scares, for instance. They don't work on me at all. I hate them. This movie, The Andromeda Strain, does a fantastic job of having that eerie atmosphere. It doesn't try to scare you. There are, as far as I can remember, no jump scares at all, but it's a far creepier film when you think about the story. And that's also something that I really like in general, not just with this film. I like stories that are scarier or creepier the more you think about them, because it's more about what's implied than about just something jumping out and saying boo and having a loud noise. Now, getting specifically to my favourite moment of the Andromeda Strain, and as you'll have seen at the start of the video, this does contain spoilers, of course, a major one. It's the last shot of the film, literally. But my favourite shot of the Andromeda Strain is the final shot of the movie. So again, if you don't want it to be spoiled, if you haven't seen this movie yet, I would recommend checking it out first. But if you either already have seen it or just don't care, then this is my favourite moment. Throughout the movie, you're presented with this virus, this Andromeda Strain, an incredibly difficult virus or disease to kill, and they present the hardiness of this virus very well throughout the film. It manages to get around containment barriers. It manages to prove to be a very difficult thing to deal with for even the best minds on the job. And so the precedent is set all the way through the movie that this is a serious disease that they're dealing with, a serious virus, this Andromeda Strain, a sentient, growing virus. In effect, a full-on alien organism that just happens to be very, very small. And at one particular point in the movie, they input the potential growth of the Andromeda virus into a computer program. And I don't know if it's just me here, but I find older technology, say from the 60s, 70s, etc., to be creepy, just in general. I think the way the films look back then, the way people talk, just has more of an eerie vibe. The films feel grittier and grainier, and I love that. Even the old technology has a rough, almost unfinished feel to it. And of course at the time that was state of the art, but now looking back it looks so primitive that it's almost weird. And basically in this scene they feed the potential numbers of Andromeda, at least what they know of it, into an algorithm on their computer program to work out what kind of infection and death rate, etc. they could expect from this Andromeda virus. And the computer basically spits out a number on screen. It flashes on the screen, there's some great music in the background. The whole movie has fantastic music and sound effects. They really do dominate the scene, even more so than the visuals sometimes. And it flashes up this number 601. And basically what that number means, as they explain earlier on in the film, is that the computer program itself is not able, due to its own processing limitations, to calculate how big Andromeda could become. So basically, the virus could get so big that the computer can no longer understand how big it could get. It's too much for the computer to deal with, like overloading a calculator. So it just throws up this error code 601, kind of like a human having too much to deal with and just getting a headache. Now, that in itself is a cool scene, but what I like about that is that in that scene, they give you a little insight into what would be the final scene of the movie. Because at the end of the film, when it seems that they've beaten Andromeda and all is well in the world, it goes back to that computer. Or at least it's implied that it's going back to the computer, and it just shows a black screen, and suddenly, along with some piercingly loud and very effective music and sound effects, this 601 flashes up on the screen again. And as I said early on in this video, that's such a strange movie moment to have as your favourite. I don't think anyone else probably has that as their favourite, or at least one of their favourite movie moments. But the reason why I love that moment so much is because I really value simplicity. I love clever concepts that are delivered in a simple way. To me, that is impressive. I respect that. I find that very, very, well, as I said, impressive. And the reason why I love the final scene so much is because of what it means. Without context, it's just 3 numbers and a loud sound effect. But when you think about it, that's when it becomes scary. Because that number is not just 3 numbers on a screen. It's what that number represents and the implication for the rest of the film. 601. Just a number. But what that number means, what it represents, is that the very best computer minds, in effect, of that time, with all of their processors, etc., cannot comprehend how big and how devastating Andromeda could become. And if you can create a movie monster that is so massive in scope and potential that even a computer specifically designed to deal with these kind of numbers overloads itself and essentially has a brain fart. That is incredible. Such subtlety and simplicity in that movie moment, but what it represents, when you really think about it, is terrifying. It's true, real-world horror. No, in real life we don't have alien viruses on Earth, but what we do have are viruses that cannot be beaten. They're just sitting there in labs, they've been created, and they cannot be stopped. And were they to ever get out of those labs, the majority of the population of Earth would die. So there is a precedent in reality applied to a film. And what that 601 with the sound effect represents, to me, makes it such a fantastic movie moment. Not just because it's scary once you think about it, but because it's handled in such a simple and effective way. Yes, they beat it this time. But what about next time? But that's it overall for my first installment of my favourite movie moments. As I said at the start, not a conventional movie moment, not one which many people think about or find as effective as I do, but I just really love it. So feel free, of course, to slap down in the comments what some of your favourite movie moments or characters or ideas are, and I'll see you guys next time. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.
It's growing.